Class, you're going to have to all behave for a longer time.
What page?
So holding on page 17 in the this book. It's we are in the book of Numbers, the portion of Matos Masei. This class is more on the second portion, the portion of Masei, which is the last portion of the last portion of the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. So this is truly a fascinating concept of the Rebbe, of Chassidus in general, that really changes the way you should think about things, especially about the past, because most of us view ourselves in a negative way because of the past. Maybe. You have a book? You have a book?
I don't.
So here's books. So you have here. Take 2 books. We have extra books.
You're such a sweetheart. Don't you think so?
So we look at our what?
You're such a help.
We look at ourselves negative because of the past, because maybe our past we weren't so perfect, and it gives us this guilt sometimes. So it gives sometimes depression, despair. How does the Torah want us to look at our past? How does the Torah reflect on our past? Are we doomed because of our past? The past history that we have gone through in life? These are very powerful questions, especially for people that have come back to Yiddishkeit in the, later on in their life. The question is that can they just walk away from the past? Can they just basically say that the past is the past and now it's the future? So the Rebbe Chassidus is going to give you an unbelievable insight into the way the Rebbe looks at this. This is a sikha, this is a talk of the Rebbe on this week's Parsha, which is going to, I believe, open up our minds to a whole different way to look at this concept in general, at forgiveness, repentance, sin, and the way we should look and the way we should feel about if we did any negative things, if we actually did sins, so to say, in our journey of our life. So the second portion of this week's Parsha is Parsha's Masei, which means journeys. The second portion deals with the journeys of Am Yisrael. It finishes the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, which is the journey of the Jewish people from Mitzrayim, from the land of Egypt, till they came to the other side of the Jordan, to the Transjordan, and from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu's birth and his leadership till his death. And next week, Parshas Devarim starts Moshe Rabbeinu's re-encounter of the Torah. Actually, according to some, the Torah ends. There's actually 4 books of the Torah. The 5th book is called Mishnah Torah, repetition of Moshe Rabbeinu, his last drasha that he gave for a month and a couple of days, 37 days. So he gave the speech, his last vision that he gave to Am Yisrael, but really it ends over here. It ends this week's Parsha. It ends the story of Moshe Rabbeinu, the journey of the Jewish people, the 40 years in the desert, and really the next part of history is the story of Joshua, the Jewish people going over the Jordan and conquering the land of Israel. So really it ends in this week's Parsha, and therefore the Torah in the big Parsha, the beginning of the second Parsha, starts off with the 42 journeys. The 42 journeys that the Jewish people went from Mitzrayim until they came to Jericho. It took them 42 journeys. See, that's in text number 1a in your book 17, in Numbers chapter 33, verse number 1, right? Eila Ma'aseh Bnei Yisrael, these are the journeys of the children of Israel who left the land of Egypt. This all happened when in the beginning of Exodus, the book of Exodus, holding Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. So it's 40 years later, under the charge of Moshe and Aaron. Moses recorded their starting points for their journeys according to the word of God, and these were their journeys and their starting points. The journey from Ramses on the first month, the 15th day of the first month, Pesach, on the day following the Passover offering, was the 14th at night. The children of Israel left triumphantly before the eyes of all the Egyptians. So the general question is asked, why is it important to tell us these 42 journeys? We can look at the Torah itself. You can go start in the book of Exodus, and you can go through the 42 journeys. Why does the Torah need to go back 40 years to tell us about the 42 journeys that the Jewish people went through? So this is a general question, and Rashi is bothered by this question. And therefore Rashi brings the Medrash, and that's in text number 1b. Rashi brings the Medrash. The Medrash gives an analogy. The Medrash says, this is an analogous to a king whose son became sick. So he took him to a faraway place to have him healed. On the way back, the father began citing all the stages of their journey. The father said to him, this is where we sat. This is where you were cold. This is where you had a headache. This is where you got fever. This is where we were. They went through the journey, the journey to the doctor, to the place of healing. And he told them all the headaches that they had in their journey. So too, God instructed Moshe to list all the places that the Jewish people angered God. Thus it says, these are their journeys. So God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, I want you to remind the Jewish people all the tzadis that I went through in the past 40 years with you. And even though I've gone through with you 42 headaches and troubles and pains, and there was a couple of good times in between, we had some fun in between too, but here are all the headaches I've gone through with you, and here we are today, ready to go into the land of Israel. That's the way Rashi, the Medrash, answers this question. That God, in essence, tells Moshe Rabbeinu after 40 years to tell the Jewish people of the good days and the bad days. Are you happy with that answer?
Yes.
Why? Why would God want to tell? Why would we need to remind people of their bad days? There's no reason to remind people of their bad days. There is. Okay, that's one person at a time. One person at a time. Let's hear.
If there weren't some bad days, you wouldn't appreciate them.
Okay, you wouldn't appreciate the good days. Yes. Yes, yeah.
God is with you even on your bad days.
God is with you in the bad days. Yes.
Amen. What?
It's all great if the bad days. It's all great the bad day. Yeah.
If you're not going to remember the bad days, how are you going to get better?
Great. Okay. All good answers. But it doesn't answer it totally. Because it's not those bad days. This is reminding them of their sins.
Yeah.
It's reminding them of their sins. That's like if a person did tshuva, repented, and we're going to remind them every year, you once did this sin, you once did that sin. Why? Why would the Torah tell us? Because it's not just tell, we had a rough time, there was no water. I understand, there was sometimes there was no water, there was no food. You want to go through those bad days. And that will be the analogy of the king and his son. His son was sick, and we tell him one day, here you had fever, here you had a stomach ache, here you complained. I can understand those concepts to remember. But this was not those concepts. This was not the stomach aches and headaches and foot aches. This was the golden calf. Why would God want to remind the Jews 40 years later that they did a golden calf?
So they shouldn't do it again.
They shouldn't do it again.
They're doing it all the time.
We know a general rule: you don't mention the person his sins after he has repented. You don't mind. Actually, in Jewish law, you're not allowed to remind a person their sins once they have changed their lives. So you're not allowed to do that in Jewish law. Here, Moshe Rabbeinu specifically tells the Yidden, he reminds them of the 42 journeys, and not only the 42 journeys, but of their sins that they have done. So the Rebbe, this is an important thing. So, because I mentioned, you don't mention somebody else, but the person himself. There's two different concepts. You never mention somebody else as negative. In general, you shouldn't mention to somebody else as negatives. But that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe once said that you have two eyes. One eye to the right, you always look at somebody else's positive, and your left eye is always look at your own negative. But never look at somebody else's negative, and only look at their positive, and look at your own negative. You should look at your own negative. Why is it important, even your own sins? Expression, David HaMelech says, King David said, Chatasi lenegdi samid. My sins are always in front of me.
You learn from yourself.
And that's the question. Most of us don't learn from our sins. We become depressed from our sins. So let's look at text number 2. What is the purpose, the Alter Rebbe says, what is the purpose of the 42 journeys in the desert? All journeys pointed to Jericho. Yericho, that was the enter point of Am Yisrael. Eibishter could have taken the Jews into a different path. He wanted them to go through Yericho. He wanted them to go through Jericho. Yericho. Why? Why did he want? The desert, right? The desert through which the Jewish people traveled is called the desert of the nations. About which is stated, this the Alter Rebbe says, God led you through that great and awesome desert in which there were snakes, vipers, and scorpions. Namely, an evil place where all negative forces feed. That's a desert. A desert is called a makam hefker. It's a wild place. Why is it called a wild place? Not a stable place? Not a place of living? Because in Kabbalistic terms, it's because it's over there, wild things can happen. It's an open, no man's land. When you have no man's land, meaning that every person can can be part of it. Every person, whether it's good or bad, could be part of it. So too, whether good forces in life or bad forces in life could be part of it. So God traveled them through this desert, He protected them, gave them a lot of protection, gave them a lot of tools to survive this desert, this no man's land. They had Moses and Aaron and tabernacle, clouds of glory, etc., etc. They needed a lot of protection to get through this. The 42 journeys were so that those who hate Him flee before Him. Namely, to cut off all vitality from negative forces. This was achieved by Jews who were created in the image of God traveling out in the desert. The Alter Rebbe says, the 42 journeys, based on the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, that the 42 journeys is really the journey that every one of us goes through. The 42 journeys of our journey in life. We go through a desert. Our destiny, the destiny that we have a general destiny of Am Yisrael is Mashiach, that's a general destiny. Until we get to that destiny, we're traveling through a desert. Our personal destiny is also to come to Eretz Yisrael, a spiritual awakening, is also our spiritual destiny. And we have these 42 journeys that we journey in life from the time we were born. And if you want to map it out, maybe one day you take a whiteboard and start mapping out your journey. You'll see that you start mapping out not only your physical journey where you traveled, how you got to Boca because nobody was born here, so how ultimately you got to this place, but also your spiritual journey. You also had a spiritual journey. You'll realize that you had this spiritual journey. Some things clicked, some things worked, some things didn't. Sometimes you went down, sometimes you went up, etc., etc. You had this spiritual journey. It's like a desert, meaning that you were open. A desert is open for any possibilities. That's the beauty of a desert, in the concept of this desert. It's open for possibilities. Everybody has the right, so to say, to do what he wants. That's free choice. In the desert, you have free choice. Right? You can go. There's no roads. There's no GPS in the desert. You have your free choice. That's true concept of free choice. Yeah, Moshe, what do you want to say?
I just want to say it's void of distractions.
What do you mean?
The desert doesn't have a lot of distractions.
Okay, but on the other hand, it's void of focus. So it's void of distractions, but there's no per se. You have to create your own journey. Oh, that's very difficult. A lot of people get lost in a desert. They get extremely lost in a desert. So you're right. There's no distractions, but sometimes no distractions gives you unlimited possibilities. Right? And sometimes distractions makes you focus. Everything has its positive and its negative. So the primary purpose of their journey was to leave Egypt, namely any sort of constraint, to get out of Mitzrayim. That was the journey. The journey was, as it says in the Torah, these are the journeys from the land of Egypt. So every step of the journey was going out of Egypt. That is really the beginning of every journey. The beginning of every journey is going out of the constraints of the previous journey. That means that if I've gone from one constraint to some kind of a better situation, now this becomes a constraint. Now I got to go to the next situation. And that third situation becomes a constraint in comparison to the previous situation. And that's the journey. We go from a situation of Mitzrayim, constraint, to here you can have a book if you want. You can have one. My pleasure. So you can have the concept. This is the aspect. So that's why it says these are the journeys of the Jewish. If you look in the portion right at the beginning, these are the journeys. Meretz Mitzrayim, right in the first verse. These are the journeys from the land of Egypt. Even though the first journey was from the land of Egypt. Once they left, they came to Ramses, they were out of Egypt. No, the 42 journeys are all going out of Mitzrayim. See, even by the 41st journey, they were still, even by the 42nd journey, they were still in Egypt. Till they crossed over to Yerichai, to Jericho, as the Alter Rebbe will soon explain what means Yerichai. That changed, became a whole new journey, came into the land of Israel, which transformed their journey.
You know, like today, Yericho is a gambling place.
Okay, that's not to do with this class. Maybe it does. We'll soon see. Thus, all journeys are considered to be journeys out of Egypt until they finally reach Yerichai. Maybe that's what they reached Yerichai, which became they became gamblers. Okay, no. Thus, they finally, which represents what is the Yerichai? Yerichai is, if you know Hebrew, what Yerichai? Yeah, is the aspect of Ruach. They reached the concept of spirit. They went from chaos to an aspect of Reach. Look at how the Rebbe says it. Which represents Messianic era, about which it stated, he shall animate v'yerechai, the fear of God. And neither with the sight of his eyes shall he judge, nor with the hearing of his ears shall he chastise. He will, Mashiach will rule the world with his spirit. Tradition has it, the Mashiach will judge with a sense of smell, reach. Also comes from the same word, reach. Aligned with the notion of Yerichai is also the sense of smell. So the Eibishter, what? So God sends God sends yeah? You have a question? What?
No, he wanted to know if Jews can go to Yericho today.
No. So God sent a neshama down to the world, puts him in a very dangerous situation, in a a desert where there is scorpions and snakes, and it's hot and it's cold and it's dangerous. No water, no, and he has to come to Yericho. He has to get rid of all the snakes, all the venomous situation, to come to the senses, to his senses, to his smell and his taste, Yericho, to the spirit of everything. And that's the journeys. So slowly but surely, we go through life. What are we trying to ultimately, and our 42 journeys, when you say, I'm journeying, what am I trying to accomplish ultimately? Is to divest myself from all the mishigasin that I've gone through life, my teenage, college, and all the mishigasin that I've gone through life, and try to get rid of it slowly but surely, and return to really what life's all about, to what really serious life is about. The problem is, it's a chaval, we should have done it when we were younger and we had more strength. To wait till we're older. We should have done it when we're younger. We were more powerful. But that's what happened. We went through life and we were hoarders, collected a bunch of stuff, a bunch of physical stuff, spiritual stuff, emotional stuff, a bunch of maybe even sins. We collected this, we hoarded a bunch of stuff, and now we got to shed ourselves. That's the journey. The journey is to shed yourself. Mitzrayim, get out of Mitzrayim. That's constraining you. This is overburdening you. It's overburdening you. All these things are overburdening you. You got to slowly, eliminate this stuff. Why would God do that? If, think about it, if the journey, even God, going out of Mitzrayim, there was two options. There was an option to go quicker. There was an option to go quicker, to get him into the land quicker. So why would God want to create a longer journey, a journey of more obstacles? Right? And God knew that, even take the sin, the golden calf, and the sin of the miraglim. He knew that was an option, that was a road to go on. So God is again, the concept of godliness is a teva, to do good. Right? He's nature to do good. Why God, who wants to do good, would take a whole nation and even put him into a situation where they can sin in the golden calf, and put them in a situation where they can sin the raglim, so that would extend it to 40 years and make it 42 obstacles. Why? What would we do that for? What would be the point of God to do that? What would be his objective?
This is part of life. It's a journey.
I'm asking again. If you're a loving father and you want to see your child get to the, he starts over here, you want to get him there. Why would you make him an obstacle course? Give him an easier way.
No, because he has to learn the hard way. Because when people get things too easily, they don't appreciate it.
That's how you grow. If you don't have
Yes,
a past.
I understand. But what happened? But think about it. What happened? 40, the sin of the golden calf. Many people died. The sins in the desert. Many people died. Ultimately, because of Meraglim, 600,000 men died. That means all those that went out of Mitzrayim didn't get into Mitzrayim. The obstacle course was not. It's not just I want him to learn. Let him fall and let him fall and let him figure out how to. That's But this was a more of a little bit of a dangerous obstacle course, and really, the question is, what's the lesson into our 42 journeys in life? That's really the question, right? Really, because ultimately, their obstacle, the Jews in the desert, didn't survive their obstacle course. They didn't make it into the land of Israel, besides the women, but the men didn't make it into the land of Israel. So why would God do that? And what's really the lesson to us that God would do this obstacle course. Why would God, you want to go to the beginning of creation, why would God create Adam and Eve and put a tree of knowledge in there and tell them not to eat it? Why would he do that for? What would he do that for? If I was God, either I wouldn't have created a tree of knowledge, or I wouldn't tell him where the tree is. Right? Why would he create that tree and tell him not to eat it? The second you tell a person not to eat it, you know he's going to eat it. And why would he test a person? Why test anybody? Why to test anybody? When you know that they're going to fail. God knew that they're going to fail. They're going to sin. The first major sin was the Echet Eitz Hadas, which we all suffer because of that till today, because of that sin of Adam and Eve. He knew they were going to sin. Why put it into plan A? It could have been plan B. Plan B was, we'll live in Gan Eden and live that way. If I'm a kind entity, why wouldn't I, to begin with, put it in plan B?
You answered it in the JLI class.
I know. I answered it.
Test at the end of the class.
So the answer is no. The answer is not. You see, Chassidus is not happy with the answer that ultimately we survive. Ultimately, we come to a better place. Chassidus answers a general answer, which is Yedida Tzeirach Aliyah. You go down to go up. You go down to go up. Yedida Tzeirach Aliyah. You go down to go up. When you say Yedida, you go down to go up, that means that you have to go down to go up. Not that you go down, that, if you go down, you go up. No, you have to go down. To go up, you need to go down. The neshama needs to go down to the world. My neshama came from a godly place. And it came to this physical world. This is a big yedida. This is a big lowering, a descent for my neshama. My neshama came down for what reason? If the whole reason is to go back to Gan Eden, what was the gain? What was the purpose? I came for Gan Eden, went back to Gan Eden. I need to have the 70, 80, 90-year journey to go back to the same place I came from. What's the point? It doesn't make sense. You learn what I gained. There's not to be gained. I learned something. There's got to be a great aliyah. There's got to be a great gain. And therefore Chassidus says that actually you don't go back to the same place of Gan Eden where you came from. If the 120 years, Mashiach didn't come, you go to even a higher place. You go to a place where you wouldn't have been if you wouldn't have come down to the world. There has to be an aliyah. There has to be a gain. There has to be a gain, a great gain. An aliyah is a great gain. There got to be a great gain. So if you take the whole purpose of an neshama coming down to the world, which is a great descent of the neshama to come down to this world, it is for this great gain. For its own great gain, not only for the world's great gain, for its own great gain. Trust me, all the good things that you receive, all the spiritual concepts received in this world, you see much greater in the Gan Eden, in paradise. There has to be something that he gains, that he spiritually gains in this world. This journey creates some aspect of spiritual gain to him.
So what is the great gain for the Jews that didn't make it to Israel?
There must be a great gain for them. There is a great gain. The journey was not in vain. They didn't get their physical gain. They didn't come to the land of Israel, but they got a spiritual gain. They had the neshama had a great purpose in the world. And what's the great gain to begin with? Is that we're here. If they weren't here, we wouldn't be here. So that's a great gain, that we will accomplish that purpose. So that's a great gain for the neshama too, because actually, turn to many, Mashiach comes, these souls will come back. So that will be a great gain for them. That will be a great. So the journey doesn't end. The truth is, a journey that hasn't ended. This journey of going out of Mitzrayim hasn't ended because we haven't yet come into the land Again, we haven't yet come into the land of Yisrael with the Messianic time. We have come into Joshua, but Joshua is not Mashiach. Even Joshua is not the complete journey of Am Yisrael into the land of Yisrael. Even David HaMelech was not the complete journey. It was all part of the journey. You with me?
Yes.
So look at text number 3. The Rebbe says, text number 3, page 20. By definition, the soul's journey through the desert of this world involves a dramatic plunge from the greatest heights to the absolute nether, a place of utterly godly concern. Why would the soul do that? Why would God put the soul through that? While it's true that the purpose of this plunge is for the heights to which it will eventually reach, the reality is that during this journey, it very much feels like a downfall. So, the Rebbe is not happy with Yeridat Tzarech Aliyah, with the down is for the up. Because why would anybody want a down? Right now, I'm on a down. So what am I gaining out of this down? That's what you say, oh, what I'm going to learn from it. Okay, everything's good. What's going to happen? What's good about right now? What's good about the down right now? And the better question is, the question again is the sin that I've done. If I've done a sin, why would God want me to do a sin?
You can't keep on blaming you.
He gave me the chance to do the sin. Not I didn't come up with sin. I didn't come up with any concept of sin. The Eibishter put in the system of sin. Right? So he goes, says you gotta eat kosher, and makes all non-kosher food cheaper than kosher. Right? It's self-understood. It's a challenge. So why the Eibishter, why do you do that for? Oh, because what's going to gain out of it? But the point I did the sin.
But you grow as a person.
What does it help me? The sin that I've done. Ultimately, I did a sin, and I carry that sin that I did. Why would God do that?
You're gonna be
Figure out a way how we're going to get to a greater place without doing sin. Like you said, falling a little bit here, complaining a little bit there, but actual sin? Why would he put it in the system sin?
we appreciate more the good when we
Yeah, but the problem is once we sin and we realize what the sin did, and we realize the power of sin went against God, now we feel guilty. We feel not complete. We feel less than whole. And it might be true, because the sin that you did, that I've done, might be a sin that I just can't get rid of ASAP.
How else are you going to learn? Life is choices.
Again, I have no problem from learning. But my problem is, why would God put in 365 Avedas?
To teach us.
365 challenges is one thing. 365 Avedas. Why would he put 365 negative commandments in the Torah that he knows each and every one of us can fall through in it? And by that, automatically I've done a sin. And that's, if you learn Kabbalah, if you learn Mussar for sure, that's cutting yourself off from God, and it's a terrible thing, and you go to hell or whatever, all the speeches you got. Why do that? Why do that? Make it 365. Not good things. I don't know. Why give it a sin? And some of them are big sins.
365 suggestions.
365 suggestions. 365 bumps on the road. Not 365 Avedas.
It's interesting.
That all of us, the Gemara says, actually the Talmud says, that every one of us fall in 3 Avedas every day.
There's 365 days to the solar year.
I know.
Is that a
Yeah,
coincidence?
it's connected. 365 days a year, 248 limbs in the body. 365 negative commandments, 248 positive commandments. So look what the Rebbe says. The downfall, it is only thereby, and later on one reached to a great height. Now, when does it feel this way? During the journey, of course. That's the problem. The problem is that right now, you're telling me that when I reach a place, I'll feel good. When you'll get older, it'll be all worth it. Right? No, but why should he fall right now? Why should he fall right now? Why would God want a person to fall right now? If God is kind, why would he want anybody to fall? Because what, he's going to gain out of it? What happens to people who won't gain out of it? They won't learn from their experience. Is that possible? It's 100% possible. So you're putting a stumbling block for somebody and saying, "Oh, I'm doing it because I want to learn from it." That's like you're gonna trip your son to hopefully he'll learn from the experience. So who would do that? If he trips, hopefully he'll learn from it. You're gonna trip your son. You're gonna put your foot out there and make him trip and make him fall, so he'll learn from the experience.
We're gonna put.
Yeah, it's a good question.
That's one of
It's a good question. It's a good question. The Eibishter, God, again, I didn't come up with Avedis. I'm not talking about murder. These are, maybe I would come up without God, so to say. I'm talking about Avedis, kosher. Why? Why do you do that for? It's a great stumbling stock for millions of Jews.
Right.
That I'm going to hope they're going to do tshuva. I'm going to hope they're going to learn from it.
What else?
So we have to. This is a good question. This is a good question.
How about a good answer?
We'll see in a minute. Relax. Now, when one feels this way during the journey, of course, when one finally reaches the mountaintop, they are able to see the true purpose of the exile. The low, how really nothing else other than a part of the climb up. So the Rebbe explains, the answer is, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu tells them. Your Avedis were part of the journey. You wouldn't have this journey if you wouldn't have done that sin. Don't look at the sin. Nobody should sin. But now, once you're past that already, don't look at the sin as a downfall and total. No, the Eibishter put that sin. God gave you the capability to sin. God gave you enticed you, put the stumbling stock before you. You have to look at that sin as a part of your journey. It's not the negative parts of your journey. It's as the same positive parts of your journey. You would not be who you are without that negative thing.
So who wants to be that part of you?
You want to,
That was your choice. So if you chose to do a negative thing, the Rebbe says, then if I've done it, I have to look at it that was the divine providence. Sure, I shouldn't do any negative. But once I've done a negative thing, that was divine, that was part of the journey.
God wanted you to do this?
In essence, if he didn't want you, he would not have such a thing as a sin. He doesn't want you, but he put it into the plan. So the Eibishter has plan A, plan B. He wants you to go plan B. But if you go plan A, it's still part of his plan. Because it's in the plan. So when God created Adam and Eve, plan A was they shouldn't eat from the tree of knowledge. Plan B was if they eat from the tree of knowledge. You can go plan A, but plan B is still part of the plan. Still part of the plan. There's still plan B. Who created plan A and plan B? Who created both of these plans? Who's the architect of both the plans? You created Adam and Eve created the tree of knowledge.
It's like saying, well, that you don't have free will.
That's the opposite. You can choose plan A, you can choose plan B. You can choose plan A or plan B. You choose plan A, your journey is this way. You choose plan B, your journey is that way. Actually, maybe the journey plan B was a better journey. Was more of a successful journey. Maybe plan A actually was not your journey. Plan A was God's journey. Plan B was your journey.
So whatever you do,
Is all the part of the journey of where your journey goes. Whatever you do ultimately is all part of the journey.
so what if a guy is a mass murderer? I mean,
That was his journey. Doesn't make it right, but that was his journey. You have to kill him. That's what the Torah says. If a guy's a murderer, we kill him. Because his journey is not a good journey. And you have to kill him.
But you're saying that God created all of this. God created.
Who created murder?
Why? Yeah, why did God create a murder?
Because the Eibishter wanted that even a murderer should become a better person. Even a murderer that murders somebody, what will be his journey? What will be the journey of a murderer? He also has a journey. He also a human being. The second you say a murderer is not a human being, then he doesn't have the journey of a human being. Everybody's a human being. Everybody has the journey. What is the journey of a murderer? Well, his journey is to be put to death. That's going to be his journey. That's going to be his journey.
believe in capital.
What's the Torah believes in capital punishment. So, according with certain rules and regulations. But what is a journey? Everybody has a journey. Doesn't make a difference whether the guy's a righteous person or a person's not a righteous person. Every person has their journey.
why would a person get depressed from a bad journey?
That's why the Rebbe says nobody should get depressed. Everybody should realize that the Eibishter gave them their journey in life.
Okay.
And nobody should be depressed of their journey. Everybody should be happy with the journey that God gave him.
So
And the choices that they took.
a mass murderer should say,
You always have to give me the mass murderer situation. A mass murderer's journey is that he's put to death. That's it. So that's his end of his journey.
he should be happy with that journey.
I'm not talking about it. No, he should do tshuva. Nobody should be happy with any sin he did. He should do tshuva. But he did it. He killed somebody. Now he has to live with that. It was part of his journey for some reason. Yes, a mass murderer has to live with the fact that he did something in his life that was part of his journey. He cannot take it out. He cannot take this action out. The question is, what do you do with it? Some things you got to think about what to do with these actions, with the situations. But my friends, you make it sound like a mass murder is terrible. The only terrible thing in the Torah. the things punished by death in the Torah is not only mass murder. Open the book. There are other things that are punished by death in the Torah that are not mass murder. Okay, so in the Torah, not only mass murder is a concept of death, but there are other sins that people do that is also punishable by death, like a mass murderer.
Not honoring the Shabbat.
Correct. So it's not only mass murder punished by death in the Torah. So a person that did an avera has to realize that that's part of his journey. It's part of his journey. The Eibishter wanted him that a certain part of his life he should have done this, and then ultimately elevate himself. But not to say that part of the journey was not part of it. Yes, it was part of his journey.
But it's not the end of the journey. You can still some and very few really.
100%. That's my point.
Yeah.
The point is, but again, a person needs to look at his life and say the negatives that he has done was part of his journey. Was part of his journey. I'm not talking about murder. I'm talking about sins, okay? Let's get away from murderer. Because a murderer should be put to death. We're talking about not a murderer. My sins that I've done, Lashon Hara is murder in Torah law. Mm-hmm. So I talk Lashon Hara like I murdered somebody. The Gemara says Lashon Hara is like murdering, like immorality and idol worship in one package. You've done 3 negative, terrible things like in one shot with one act of evil talk. So what do I do with Lashon Hara? I don't know. I spoke in Lashon Hara. I don't know about you guys, but the Gemara says we all fall in Lashon Hara. So what do we do with that? It's part of my journey. I have to think about it. Why am I a Lashon Hara? Why do I speak Lashon Hara? What is in me that gets me to speak evil talk? And what is the positive? What do I need to learn from that?
Don't do it.
It's more than just don't do it. Because there's a reason why I speak Lashon Hara. I just cannot stop doing Lashon Hara, just don't do it. Like tell a drug guy, just don't take drugs. It doesn't work. There's a reason why he takes drugs. There's a reason why I speak Lashon Hara. And I need to go to the reason, not just don't do it, because I tried that many times, doesn't work. Doesn't work. We always say, I can't believe I did that, right? When we say something about someone, we get angry or whatever, we say, I can't believe it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I was out of myself. But we say that expression. Because we really, right, because that's true. So the question is, why did you do it? That's really the problem. Just to say I'm not going to do it is not going to work. I need to say why I did it. I need to figure out why I speak Lashon Hara, and then I can come to a better conclusion. But you know what? You know my conclusion is I can't stop it. That's why I keep on doing it. I keep on doing it because I say this is it. Take me the way I am. I'm a sinner. What should I do? Hallelujah. What should I do? That's not a good conclusion, because that's not what you are. That you just said 2 seconds ago. It's really not me. I would never do such a thing if I was thinking about it. So look at it. This is then the idea, the analogy that describes on how on the way back the father begins citing all the sages of the journey. After the plunge down and through the 42 journeys begins the process of going back and climbing up. That means retracting one's steps along the very same journey and appreciating how these downfalls were really part of climbing up. These were all part of the journey. These downfalls are not something I want to get rid of, per se. These downfalls were part of my journey. They were who I was at that time. That ticked in me and saying I cannot be this way. I need to change this way. So I need to be this way to realize I need to change this way. That's a problem. When I don't think I really speak Lashon Hara, or I don't think I'm really doing a sin, that I never rectify the sin. Because I say it's not me. No, it is you. At this present time, when you spoke the evil talk, you hurt that other person, is you. It is you. At this present time, it is you. You got to think about it. Why is it you? Thus God said, list all the places the Jewish people angered me. Not that they just fell in this command. No, I want you to list the golden calf where they sinned. I want you to tell them the Meraglim. I want you to tell them, Kairach, tell them all these places where they actually sinned. Because that was their journey.
What's the Meraglim?
When they're despised. With a proper framing, so why would he do that? Because with a proper framing, we'll be able to thank God for these challenges. We will be able to understand how they truly form a kindness to bring us higher. We'll actually realize that this downfall was our greatest success. This Aveda brought us to something greater. This sin brought us to something better.
heavy duty.
I'm holding page 22. But the Rebbe really wants to understand this, because this is a very deep concept. This is a very interesting concept. To say that my sin is my success. That's a dangerous thing to say. That's what I'm almost saying. Let's all go sin. Right? We want more success. Let's go now and do some juicy Avedas. So it doesn't work that way. Because self-esteem, nobody should sin. And the problem is with sin, that once we start sinning, it's very hard for us to do tshuva.
We speak about a journey, Rabbi, and it was very well put. But I think of it this way. A journey is going from here to there. It's your starting place and an end place.
Right.
You want to reach a goal. You're starting off with certain averas, so to speak. And when you go through life, you want to become a better person.
Correct.
And that journey should help you become a better person.
Right.
Because you learn through Torah what is right, what is wrong,
Right.
what is proper.
Very good. But it's interesting, the patriarchs were called Yesharim. They were called straight people. It says in their journeys, they left and they came. In every one of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it says they left, vayetze, vayavai. They left and they came. Because they left and nothing stopped them. Our journey is like a roller coaster. It's not a yashar. Our journey is not, we left and we came. We left, we went high, we suddenly went down, we went back high, we went suddenly pitched fast down, and you can look at the journey of the Jews, Bamidbar. They were in a high, and then they were in a low, and then they were back in a high, and then they were in a deep low. It's a roller coaster. And that creates a question. The lows are the question is not on the highs, how to live at the highs. The question is how to live at the lows. How to realize, because the lows sometimes can depress the highs. As I said, the Jewish people, the lows in their journey, some of the lows were pretty big lows. And they hit rock bottom. So this is a deep thing. This is a deep thing in Chassidus that tells us that actually in the Aveda there's a mitzvah. In the sin, there's a mitzvah. It all depends the way you frame it.
Every sin?
Every sin. Again, a murder. Next, I'm not talking about that. You murdered the mitzvah is to kill him. Let's not go. Everything is the murder.
That person was destined to die, and Hashem used the murder.
Okay, let's not go to. We don't need to go to the extreme situations. That's a whole different subject. Anytime, because it's a separate issue, and that's you'd always pick that issue. That's the regular sins. We all sin. Lashon hara and eating. Maybe some of us ate not kosher, and some of us break to Shabbos, and whatever we did in the past. Let's pick the things between us and God, not to pick the things between us and man. Between us and man creates a whole different situation, because it's not only to do with God. It has to do with him. If I steal for somebody, I have an issue.
If I had a roommate in college, if there was a fly in the room, he would not kill the fly. He would make sure he opened the window.
My wife does that. I don't have the room in college. She's my roommate. She doesn't kill a fly either. So, some people do that. So, that's beautiful. That's expression. I wouldn't kill a fly. But when it comes to between man and man, it's a whole different issue. And that's why I don't like, it's a whole different discussion. We'll talk about between man and God. The struggles of the Jewish people in the desert between man and God. It was not between man and man, it was between man and God. Inside Moshe and Yerikeda, which Torah says also was a struggle between man and God. So let's just stick to that. Let's just stick to that. Okay? So the question is, how do we look at an Aveda as a mitzvah? How do we look at, that's really what we want to look at. We want to look at the Aveda as a mitzvah. The Aveda as the sin, as the stepping point to something greater. So the Rebbe still wants to understand it. So the Rebbe says one can understand that in so much as the overall plunge into the wilderness, page 22, text number 4. It's a setup advanced by God, and it's ultimately rendered as kindness as part of the climb up. But the question is, but those times that a Jew angered God, the sin in the desert, were a result of the Jewish wanton sins. In other words, the Jews set in motion a downfall. They made their own downfall. Beyond that was ordained from on high. What then compels us to argue that they too are a part of the climb up? The Rebbe wants to understand this. The Rebbe wants to understand it, so we have to go a little bit deeper. And then, how is that possible? How is that possible to take a sin and to say the sin itself is a positive thing? The sin itself is part of the journey. No, the sin should be eradicated. The sin should be got rid of, seemingly. But no, the Torah says the sin is. In essence, the Torah says, no, the sin, the golden calf, is one of your journeys. Is what got you to the second place. It's got you to the next place. Is the golden calf, which was a great sin. The sin of the spies is part of your journey. Yeah. So the Rebbe says we have to go back to the creation of man. When God created man, He said, Nasa Adam b'tzalmeinu kidmuseinu, page 23, 4a. Let us make man in our image and likeness. It's this is a very interesting word, interesting expression. Nasa, let us make man. What does that mean? Let us. This is a dilemma. This is where the Goyim took this verse and they ran with it. Let us make man. It sounds like God had a partner in creation. It's plural. Nasa. Let us make man. He didn't say I should make man. So he said the ministering angels. But that word gives to a lot of problems. If the Torah could have taken that word out, then we would have been better. And actually, the look at the Medrash says, when Moshe was transcribing the Torah, he dutifully recorded God's act of creation on each of the first 6 days. When he reached the verse, and God said, "Let us make man," he said, "Wait a second." He said to God, "It's not a good word. I think we should change the word. You want me to write Nasa, let us make man? You should have changed the word. You should have said, you're giving a place for heretics. By saying that word, you're giving a capability for somebody to say, oh, God is not alone. There's other gods. God is a partner. God is look, the Torah itself says, Nasa, let us. So it's not a good word. Let's change it. Could change it easily. But God in singular. So God responded. He said, just write. He said, no, continue. Just write Nasa. God, why? Whoever seeks to err, let him free to do so. That's the setup. That's the setup. That is the original setup. That's the original setup. The Eibishter put it into the process. Making a mistake. It's part of the setup. Making a mistake is not something that's totally out of the system. The Eibishter says, I put in the system making a mistake. I'm happy with that concept. I want a person. It's almost like I want a person to make a mistake.
The error is human.
Not to prove that he's human. No. It's actually a positive thing for him to make a mistake. It's almost like a positive thing for him to make a mistake.
Is it that man himself is a partner with Hashem in creation? So he's saying, let us man because he has free will.
Whatever. There's many interpretations to that. That's not. Trust me. There is. They say a library of answers to the question. It's not the point. The point is Moshe Rabbeinu said that we don't have to have a library of answers to the question. Change the word, and there won't be questions, and that's it. So why write the Torah where you can have a question, have 500 books about it, and 500 explanations? Just change the word and finish. And the answer the Abisha says, not that you should go learn the 500 interpretations. The answer is, the Abisha says, let the person there. It's fine. It's like the beginning at the same time. There's a couple of times that God, with Moshe Rabbeinu tells God, we should write it different. But like Bereshis Bara Elokim. Bereshis Bara Elokim, which means the beginning was created God. That's how you really that's a real translation. We flip it over. We say that God created the beginning. But really, if you read the Hebrew, Bereshis, in the beginning, Bara was created. Elokim. Moshe Rabbeinu also said we should change it. We should put Elokim first. Elokim Bara Bereshis. God created the beginning. That would be a better way to translate it. That would be a better way to write it. And God answers the same thing. Write it that way. Because a person wants to come make a mistake. Let him come make a mistake. I want a person to have two roads. I don't want a person to have one road, because then it's my road. Then if I'm gonna write the Torah in a certain way, so then it will be my Torah. I want it to be their Torah. So let them go and make 70 ways to the Torah. Let them come up with 70 ways, 70 avenues to the learning of this Torah. That's you have thousands of books. If the Torah wouldn't be written that a person can have different interpretation, it would be one book. Now you have libraries and libraries of interpretations to the Torah. Why? Because the way the Torah was written. But this is not the limitations to the Torah are not mistakes in the Torah. But here God says, let them come and make a mistake. That means the mistake is part of the agenda. Yes.
What is the source of these two? The air that
It's a Gemara. It's a Talmud. It's in the Talmud. Wait, what's the source?
It's from
The sages.
The oral part of
Yeah.
learning.
So look at the Rebbe in text number 5. The Rebbe says, what's that word? Deterioration that society or an individual experiences as a result of a human activity and the irresponsible exercise of free choice is ultimately in accordance with God's plan. Your free choice is also God's plan. Everything. God gave you 70 ways to go. Who created the 70 ways to go? Who created to do the sin or not to do the sin? Who created it? Maybe she created Avenue A, Avenue B. You didn't come up with the mitzvah or the aveda. You didn't come up with any mitzvah or any aveda. Every avenue you're going to go was established by the Eibishter to either choose A or B or C. You don't have a choice that was not available yet. Is there anything that's a choice in life that is not there? No. You have a choice A and B or C. You can be a good person or a bad person. That's the two choices that were there before. You can get angry or not get angry. That's the choice that was there before. There's no third choice. Or semi-angry. That was there before too. So everything was in the plan. Everything was there already. It's just a choice that you're going to do A or B. You're going to be happy or sad. Happiness and sad you didn't create. Are you going to be happy or depressed? That was there before. You want to be happy or depressed? You didn't come up. None of us came up here with a depression. They wish to create depression. If God wouldn't create depression, no one would be depressed. If God would create joy, no one would be joyful either. All these are creation by God, so there's two options. That's your choice. Your choice is to take option A or to option B. We have the expression of Torah. I've given you life and death. Choose life. You want to choose left? That's your choice. But the concept of life and death is, I already put that option there. I already created those two avenues. So, in essence, God takes responsibility in creating that option. They wish to created that option. In essence, I hope you understand what the Rebbe is showing, that you're looking at sin. I'm talking about sin that I've done. I'm not talking about sin to do. Because nobody should do a sin, guys. Don't take this out. Nobody should do any sin at all. God forbid. Nobody should do a sin. Not anybody. Nobody should talk lashon hara. Nobody should talk. Talking about after the fact. After the fact, I've done something negative. God forbid. Then that was part of the plan. That was one of the options. That was one of the things that God created that would be my option. And I did it. I fell through that second option, which God, in essence, established that as an option.
God did not have planned which option you would choose.
No.
Okay.
That leaves me free choice.
But he knows the future.
That doesn't change any of my choice. That doesn't change that aspect of free choice. I had the choice to choose A or to choose B.
So he knows which option you're going to choose, but the choice was still yours.
The choice is mine. That's a whole different subject and a whole different concept. What is free choice and divine providence, how they come together. But that's a whole different, it's also a very deep concept to understand the differences of that. But ultimately, let's establish that fact, as the Rambam says, that's the fact, that the Eibush doesn't take away your free choice. That's one of the principles of Judaism. God doesn't take away anybody's free choice. You want to eat the kosher? Eat the kosher. You want to eat not the kosher? Eat the non-kosher. Now that if I, God forbid, ate the non-kosher, that was a choice that the Eibush to put in the system. It was there already in the system. It's not like there was no such thing as non-kosher. Imagine God takes away any aspect of non-kosher in the world, then there would be a problem.
It's not a problem being kosher.
So, if God would take away that challenge, Baruch Hashem, it's not a challenge for you, but a challenge for thousands and millions of Jews in the world. If God would take away that challenge, there wouldn't be a challenge. There wouldn't be a challenge for Jews to eat non-kosher. Because the challenge will be gone. But right now there is that challenge. There is that Aveda. There is that sin. And if a Jew, God forbid, does eat non-kosher, and now he looks back, he has eaten non-kosher, now he looks back and he said, what would I do with that? Why did I take that avenue? Why did God give me that avenue better? Why did God give me the avenue? Why do you have to have such a thing that is a non-kosher animal? And I would fall through it and eat that non-kosher animal. Why did he do that for? What does he have against pigs?
Why did he do it?
What?
So why did he do it?
Because he wanted that to be part of my journey, that I should fall into this Aveda, I should fall into this sin, and one day look back and say, but what did it do for me that? What have I learned from that? What have I learned from that Aveda? What did I learn from that Aveda? Not that, I've done a negative thing, I'm a terrible person. No. What was it part of my journey? Now that you have reached to a higher plateau and you have rectified your life, you've become a better person, what was that part of, why was that part of my life? How was that part of making me who I am today? That's looking at the past in a whole different way. The Rebbe wanted that Jews should look at the past in a different way. They shouldn't look at the past as something they gotta be shameful of, something they gotta be remorseful of, something they gotta feel terrible, guilty of. No. That was a journey that the Eibishter wanted you to go.
You just put all the psychologists out of business.
I'm trying to do that.
I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
My therapist.
True, a sinful act is absolutely contrary to God's will, right? Don't come out of this fast thinking that a sinful act is God's will. However, it results decline of society moral standards, or an individual does not contradict his will. Consequently, the decline is not a genuine descent, but rather a necessary component of the ascent to which it leads. So, in essence, in Kabbalah and Chassidus, there's the difference between God's will and God's thought. God doesn't want you to do the sin. But he still put in his thought, there's still a positive thing if you're going to do the sin.
I don't know whether to go out and sin or be good.
Understand? There's still something positive in it.
Yes.
So the Rebbe says, look in text number 6. God is a paragon of goodness. And it's the nature of one who is good to always bestow goodness. The Eibishter is good. Why would God want to give anything negative in the world? Therefore, so much as God is the one who enables deterioration, he gave the capability for sin. If God was good, why would he have the concept of sin? We must conclude that no alternative path exists to arrive at the ascent, if not of this magnitude. For had there been an easier or better path, one that avoids suffering and lapses, why would God provide a more difficult route? So you must say that this route was ultimately the positive route. So even though you might think, oh, God could have took the Jews into Israel in one day or in three days, but then he took them 40 years. That's a loving, you could have taken them in one day, you took them 40 years, you're such a loving God? Yes, that was a much better way. Even though it was a bumpy journey. Because that bumpy journey created a whole different nation.
What sort of a nation do you think we would have been if we would have gotten there in one day?
We would be a bunch of wussies.
Speak for yourself.
Because everything was done by God. Like this, we struggled and we worked on ourselves, and it took us 40 years, and we had struggles between God and ourselves, with each other. It was a journey.
So maybe it's good that we ate from the apple.
100%. That's the point. The point is, it's ultimately very good that she ate from the apple. 100%. Even though God wanted that you shouldn't eat, that we'll all be living in Gan Eden. But option B, which is rougher, is ultimately better.
Tell that to a woman at childbirth.
You appreciate
Is
it.
ultimately better.
You learn how to appreciate it.
100%. Child, woman, child, but ultimately the bond between a mother and a child is because she goes through childbirth. If she had children in a second, there wouldn't be that bond. So that bond between mother and child is because of this journey. Because of that journey that they have. That's why they have a bond forever and ever and ever. Because that's the journey. A man doesn't have that kind of, because they don't go through that journey.
It's a different journey.
Different journey, but self-understood.
The assuring that you go through creates a better person because you saw what was in the past and you see what the result is afterwards.
Correct.
The ultimate goal is become a tzaddik if you can.
Right. So God could have made us all tzaddikim. That's Gan
You
Eden.
have to go through.
But then it'll be God's journey. And it'll be a beautiful journey. But God said, I like humans' journey. Because even though it's bumpier, it's ultimately better.
You learn from it.
You learn from it, I learn from it, we both learn from it, we both grow, and we both can go together in the journey. Like, this is not my journey. If the Jewish people, it would have been God's journey, and it would have been God's world. And now it wouldn't have been it'll be like in Gan Eden. It'll be like angels. And God said, that's not humanity. Nasadim, I like errors. I like humans that make errors and struggle, make sins, fix them, do tshuva, up and down, and they realize that every down is not the downer, it's actually the better for their upper, that they go down, they have a downer once in a while. And actually that's the way you'd look at a downer. A downer is not a downer, but actually it makes my upper better because I had a downer. One step back to make 2 steps forward. It's nothing wrong to 1 step back. I should never have to go 1 step back. But if I went 1 step back, it's for 2 steps forward. That's the way you look at it. That's about it. So if I should never go 1 step back, right? I should always go forward. But if I gone 1 step back, it's not because God wants me to keep me back. It's because I'm going now 2 steps forward. And that's really the lesson. So the step back actually made my 2 steps forward. If I would never made that step back, I would have never made the 2 steps forward. The Rebbe wanted that everybody, this is so important, because the Rebbe wanted that everybody should look at their past in a positive way. Even though it was negative. Even though it was negative. Might have been negative. I'm not talking negative though with the whatever. We're talking about they did sins in their life and they did negative things. It was told a story that once a guy used to, I said this story before, he had tattoos all over himself, and then he came about tshuva, and tattoos, and going to go through this whole surgeries and getting rid of his tattoos, very painful, very expensive. So he wrote to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, leave the tattoos. They're part of your journey. Should you ever put the tattoos on? No. But right now you did. So then that's part of the journey. That was your choice. That was B'yad Hashem. The Eibishter gave you that challenge. It was part of who you are today, those tattoos. And you should leave them.
Wear long sleeves.
No, it's a very powerful thing. It's an attitude. It shows you the attitude that ever wanted to show you an attitude on a person. You shouldn't go through all this pain and suffering to what you did something negative. You did tshuva on that aspect. You and the Eibush did tshuva. Now realize that actually you became who you are because you did that negative thing. So the Rebbe says, let's knock this off. The truth is that the reason why a person can sometimes make a mistake to listen to his Yetzer Hara and to stumble into his sin is because the Yetzer Hara has been dispatched from the high to tempt him. Who sent you a Yetzer Hara? Who sent you an evil inclination? Did you wake up in the morning and say, evil inclination, please come into me? Your Eibush sent you an evil inclination. It emerges that even those lows resulting from sin are also part of the master plan to bring one to tshuva, that it introduced even a greater light through the process of transforming sin into merits. And that's the beauty. And that's why it says in text number 8, Mokish Bal Tshuva Eindim, in a place where repentance stands. Tzaddik and Gemuna, even the most righteous don't stand. Why? Because our Tshuva changes the world. So the Eibishter wanted to change the world. The righteous ones just go through the world. They go above the world. The world does not affect them. They don't even deal with the world because they're totally above it. But our tshuva is a person who did a sin, meaning he went into the world. Not only went into the world, he actually got affected by the world. He got dragged down by the world. And now he elevates the world. And now he does tshuva and elevates everything. That's why with a Bal Tshuva stand, even a tzaddik can never come to that kind of situation. So that's what happened. If you think about it, in the first sin of the Jewish people went out of Egypt, they sinned the golden calf, the worst sin in the world. Imagine, the Eibishter gave them the 10 Commandments, 2 tablets written by God himself. And then they go and they go make a golden calf. Are you crazy? How do you do that? How do you do that, right? I am God, God, you shall not have any gods. And then they go and they make a golden calf. Can you imagine if you were God, that you would say, I just took them out of Egypt. Here I give them the Torah, and they go. Not even a month later, they're going and they're doing everything opposite I said. But what does God do? He gives them the second tablets. They did tshuva, they repented, and he gives them tablets that are greater than the first tablets. And what's the difference? The first tablets were written by God and carved out. I'm saying both of them were written by God. The first tablets are carved out by God. The second tablets are carved out by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses carved out the second tablet. Which survived? The first tablets are broken. The second tablets are here today someplace. Raiders of the Lost Ark. So the first stage, that's what the Rebbe says in text number 9. The first stage of revelation from above, which is ultimately on us and cannot come fully integrated in our reality. This friction allows for possible implosion. That's why you think about it. When you have revelation and there's no vessel, there's no capability to integrate and to come part of, so it implodes. And that's what happened in Gan Eden. You had revelation, too much revelation, Adam and Eve. They need to sin. The Jewish people give them Matan Torah. God, when you force something on humans, they need to implode. Even good. Bad for sure, but even good. You give them, they don't feel like like it's theirs, it implodes. It collapses. The Eibishter created humans, there should be a partner in creation. That's the way the Eibishter created us. That we should not feel that something is given from above. It's something that we worked on. Something that we created. That's the way God created us. And that's why the second tablets, which was formed by man, is something that is given through us, and it lasts. That's why the Jewish people that went out of Mitzrayim were given everything on a silver platter, did not survive. Well, the Jewish people went to the desert 40 years and get plunted and get schlucked and struggled, because they were humans and they made mistakes and they worked on themselves. Ultimately, went into the Eretz Yisrael. So the journey that what Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Jewish people, and he says to all of us, don't look back as your journey as a negative point because you were not perfect. No, don't be. You're not supposed to be perfect. If you were perfect, then God wouldn't give you the challenge to be imperfect. What would God give? If God knows you're going to fall into imperfections, why would He give you the capability to be imperfect? Why would He give you the challenge? If the Eibishter knows you're going to be imperfect, so why would the Eibishter give you the challenge? Well, that's not a kind entity to know that because the Eibishter doesn't want you to be perfect. He wants you to be better. And the only way you're going to be better is by your imperfections, is by your previous imperfections. Hopefully. By contrast, the second tablets were earned through human effort. Our tshuva, crafted by Moshe, not by God. They were therefore suitable vehicles for the practical realization of God's ultimate plan. And that's why, it's never ending over here. But let's bring this to an end. It's such beautiful stuff. It's all the Rebbe's statements over here. And that's why God congratulates Moshe for breaking the first tablets. God thanks Moshe Rabbeinu. Imagine God made those tablets and He thanks him for breaking it, because he says, you know what? My Avenue A was the first tablets, but Avenue B was better. My agenda was the first tablets, but the Jews went Avenue B, and it's better. It's a better way for humans. And therefore, thank you for breaking the first tablets.
That is awesome. I never thought I would hear such a thing.
Yeah. Okay. We're done. I mean, you can read the next couple of things. It's basically you got the point. It's already an hour and a half. So it's very powerful. Hopefully, it's a very powerful lesson that we all can learn in our journey, in our own journey. Have a wonderful, beautiful.